You know what's a real drag for any developer? Managing servers. It's a total headache. So in this explainer, we're going to talk about Azure Serverless. It's this powerful way to build apps where you literally don't have to think about infrastructure ever again. Sounds good, right? So let's just jump right in with a question that I'm betting hits pretty close to home for a lot of you. Are you just tired of it? The endless cycle of managing, patching, and scaling servers? All that setup, the maintenance, constantly worrying if you have enough capacity. I mean, it's a mountain of work that, at the end of the day, isn't actually building cool stuff for your users.
And that, right there, is the exact problem that serverless computing is designed to fix. You can think of it as an architecture with a cloud provider. We're talking about Azure here. Takes care of all that server management for you. They spin up resources just when your code needs to run, and poof, they're gone when it's done. So what's left for you? Just the fun part, focusing purely on your code.
Okay, let me give you an analogy to make this super clear. Think about it this way. Using old school servers is kind of like owning a car, right? You've got the car payment, the insurance, gas, maintenance, finding a parking spot. You're paying for all that stuff even when the car is just sitting in the driveway. Well, serverless, that's the ride-sharing service for your code. You just call a ride when you need it, get where you're going, and you only pay for that one trip. No overhead, no maintenance. Simple as that.
All right, so that sounds pretty great in theory, but how does Azure actually pull this off? Let's pop the hood and take a look at the main tools in their serverless toolbox.
Okay, so when you get down to it, Azure basically gives you two main ways to go. On one side, you've got Azure Functions. This is all about the code. You're writing these small, focused snippets of code that do one specific thing and do it really well, like, say, resizing an image. Then on the other side, you have serverless containers. This is more about the whole application. It lets you take your existing containerized apps and run them in a serverless way. And that is a game changer if you want to migrate a bigger, more complex service without having to rebuild it from the ground up.
But wait a minute, this brings up a pretty big question, right? If you don't have a server just sitting there running 24/7 waiting for something to do, what actually kicks your code into gear? Well, the answer is where the real magic of serverless comes in. It's all about something called triggers. Your code can just sit there, doing nothing, until a very specific event happens, and that event is what triggers it to run.
And what's so cool about this is the huge variety of triggers you can use. I mean, you've got the classic HTTP request, right? An API call comes in, boom, your function runs. You can use a timer to kick off code on a schedule, perfect for something like a nightly cleanup job. Or a new message in a queue can trigger some processing. And then you have these really powerful services like Event Grid and Service Bus that let your code react to pretty much anything happening anywhere in your Azure setup. You can build these amazing interconnected systems to just work.
Okay, so the theory is cool and all, but let's walk through a real-world example to see how all these pieces actually fit together. This is where it's all going to click into place. So picture this. Step 1. A user uploads an image to your cloud storage. That's it. That one simple action, the upload, automatically fires off a trigger. That's step 2. Now for step 3, that trigger wakes up an Azure function. And this little piece of code could do anything. Maybe it creates a thumbnail, or it analyzes the picture to see what's in it, or even pulls text out of the image. And finally, step 4, the function takes whatever it found and writes the results to a database. The whole thing is completely automated, it can scale to handle millions of uploads, and you only paid for the fraction of a second it took for that code to run. How cool is that?
All right, so this all sounds pretty incredible, and honestly, it is. But, you know, like any big decision in tech, it's not a magic bullet. There are pros and cons, so it's really important we look at both sides, the amazing benefits and the trade-offs you have to think about. Time for a little reality check.
And this really lays it all out. The upsides are massive. You get lower costs because you're only paying for what you use, the scaling is automatic and elastic, and your developers can move so much faster because they aren't stuck dealing with servers. But on the flip side, you have to be aware of things like cold starts, which is a little delay on the first run. There are also limits on how long a function can run, and keeping an eye on hundreds of tiny functions can get tricky.
Let's talk a bit more about that cold start thing, because it's a really important idea in serverless. Here's what happens. If your function hasn't been called in a while, Azure is smart about it. It puts the resources to sleep to save you money. Totally makes sense. But then, the very next time a request comes in, there's a tiny delay while the platform has to wake everything back up and get your code ready. Now, we might be talking about just a fraction of a second, but if your app needs to be super fast, that's definitely something you need to account for.
Okay, so we've talked about the power, the triggers, the pros, the cons. With all of that in mind, where do you even start?
what's a good first step into the world of serverless?
Well, there are some perfect places to dip your toes in. For starters, think about any kind of data processing. That image resizing example we used, a perfect use case. Or what about building simple, lightweight APIs where you don't need a whole server humming along 24/7? Serverless is fantastic for that. It's also amazing for automating scheduled tasks, or as the backend for tons of IoT devices sending data. Basically, any situation where that event-driven, pay-for-what-you-use model makes sense, serverless is going to shine.
You know, if there is one single thing to take away from all this, it's this. Serverless is all about shifting your focus. It's about letting the cloud handle the messy, complicated infrastructure stuff so that you and your team can pour all of your time and energy into what really matters, which is building awesome features that your users will love and that add real value to your business.
And that really just leaves us with one final question to think about. When you take all that time and mental energy you used to spend on servers and you get it all back, what does that unlock for you? What amazing new problem are you going to solve?